Well, welcome back to AWS. Today we're speaking with Ben Winspear. Ben is a professional artist who's based in Melbourne, Australia. He's been painting for well over 21 years professionally, and his work is very, I think in one word, intriguing and interesting in how he captures particularly his passion for the Australian landscape. Ben paints portraits, he does commission work, and he teaches as well. So today we're going to hear a little bit about how his journey's progressed, how he started and transitioned, and what are some of his overarching philosophies for the work he creates. So sit back and enjoy, and if you get some value from this video, don't forget to click the subscribe button, hit the like, and also the bell notification, because I don't want you to miss out on our next exciting interview behind the scenes with another great artist somewhere in the world. Thank you for making some time to catch up and have a chat to me. And I've read up about your biography, so a little bit about your background, but also had a look at some of your amazing paintings. And I thought there's some really interesting story behind some of those. so I thought I'd say good day from one artist to another. So thanks.
No, thanks for having me, Sylvie. And it's always nice to chat about painting and the journey. Yeah, I'm a third generation painter. So my grandfather was a good portrait painter. Yeah, I am. It's in the blood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you've got lots of different things you paint. Like if you paint oils and you paint watercolor, you know, from sort of abstract through to realism, the portraits through to. I saw a couple of amazing paintings. I sort of grabbed me from the galah, the pink galah, and the bird in the hand, and there's a beautiful figure drawing there of a woman walking through, you know, it looks like a coastline or something, and just your landscapes as well. So being an artist in Melbourne, whereabouts are you in Melbourne? And tell me a little bit about how do you work, mostly in the studio or you're out and about?
I guess to sort of round everything out, I'm a bit of an exploratory type of person, as you can see, and as you've just covered. So several mediums and not so much different styles, but exploration of different areas of painting. And I've always been interested in abstract painting and to want to try and understand it to a degree. But I was trained as a representational painter, and the more I paint realistically, the more I realise it's abstract first and foremost anyway. So I guess the way that I see it is gradually as I paint and, live my life, the representational and the abstract are coming together more and more as I paint. I spend a lot of time outside plein air painting. A lot of my inspiration has drawn from the landscape, but I also absolutely love, portraiture as well.
Oh, wonderful. And with you were talking about the abstract, and, a lot of things have that in there. Is there an example of maybe a recent work that you've been working on that, unpack a little bit more about that, the bit about the abstract?
So some of that come out of my teaching. So I have quite a few students, and I'm very interested in teaching fine art. And over the last, say, 5 years, even drawing on some of the academic process as well. Coming out of that, the start of a painting is obviously very simplified in a way. And, often I'm making a painting and I think, I should just leave it at this stage, at the very start. It has a freshness and an abstractness to it that I just think is fantastic. But then often I just, continue on working it and, it becomes something else. And bit by bit, I guess I've just fallen in love with the broad abstract patches.
What sort of tools do you use?
So obviously brushes, but I use lots of palette knives as well. Have some very favourite ones, which are well worn into, how I like them. Use my fingers, use my hands a lot in painting.
And tell us then, have you got one of those that you can talk to us a little bit about?
Sure. So I love the Australian landscape. I love our native wildlife, and I used to paint a lot of native wildlife, particularly birds, when I was a child. And so grew up painting birds and animals, and then gradually fell in love with portraiture. But as part of a side, sort of almost like a side journey, I have this exploration around what I call the page series, and they're all based on the page of a book, which is the ones you'll see on my website with the square format in them, or the rectangle format. So I have one going at the moment. I'm around blossoming, and I guess metaphorically, it's about the fulfillment of life and when you come to the fullness of your expression, I guess.
That's lovely. And I couldn't help but notice you used a really interesting phrase on your website, philosophy. You know, you've got a philosophy around the different pieces of work you've got, but also overarching how you like to work. And I'm sure that's something you pass on to your students and get them to think about what their philosophy is as well, you know, having their own identity. So there was an interesting, I think it was a 16th century English statesman and philosopher and self-taught artist that you use his quote on your website. I thought that was cool.
That's a quote by Francis Bacon, the painter. And the quote is,
yes,
the job of the artist is always to deepen the mystery. And that just absolutely resonates with me, because I think, you know, on one level, it's great to be representational and tell things as they are, but, you know, it's just as interesting and just as important to give, you know, people something deeper to dig down to. And, you know, we all like some mystery and we all like exploration. And, you know, there's no better thing when you see someone, you know, or someone comes and speaks to you about, you know, I love this painting. It just makes me see this and experience that, and it connects. And so many times, particularly with these page paintings, I've had people come and tell me stories about their life, how this painting actually connects with the story in their own life somewhere along the line. So that quote absolutely resonates with me. And only recently, I've just started at the start of my class giving my students a quote by a famous artist.
Why not? I think there's some brilliant quotes out there, and you picked a beauty. I think that's a beauty. I'm with you on that one. And I think one of the things about the work is, you say, when you look at your work from the literature work, there's the story behind what you see. How did you get influenced by your other generations in your family?
So even from when I can remember, you know, one of my earliest memories is my mother had quite a few watercolours of her father's, and portraits and life drawings, and she often used to get them out, or we'd say as children, you know, can we have a look at them? And a Sunday afternoon she'd dig them out and we'd go through them, and she'd explain, you know, where they were painted. Obviously, she was a child. They used to travel around Europe on holiday, and my grandfather would paint. And of course, my mother was there with him as a child, you know, watching, enjoying. So she remembered where a lot of them were. And then, you know, obviously grew up with a lot of art materials. My parents were very creative as well, painting. My mother very much into crafts as well, and fairly fine crafts, you know, silk painting, screen printing, lots of fantastic embroidery. So I've just grown up in a creative environment, and it's, you know, it's just in my blood, I guess.
Was there a point in your career then where you went, I'm going to be an artist because I've got all this equipment I've invented?
There definitely was. When I was 30, you know, I had what I guess I would describe as a fairly ordinary life. At the time, I was driving earth-moving machinery, trucks and bobcats and all sorts, and I've done quite a few different things in my life. And up until then, I hadn't really had any thoughts about being a full-time artist. So the painting or any type of creativity had sort of slipped by the wayside. And I came home one day and I thought, it's got to be more to life than this. I really need a hobby. And I dug out the pencils. I remember at the time, watercolour pencils I had, dug them out, put pencil to paper, and I just knew in one moment that that's what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And I decided there and then I'd wanted to be a professional artist, and it's been an amazing journey since then. So that was 21 years ago.
Oh, well done. you've really struck a chord, I guess, with a lot of people work as well, in terms of some of those varied subjects. But I guess the mystery, like you said in the quote, you really brought that out in your work, in my view, and some of your abstract work. And I just sort of was looking at those, and they really make me wonder. Like, I'm like, what is that about? So I thought that was fantastic. I wondered also then, how do you manage the balancing of the teaching and also your painting?
It's a really good question. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges of an artist, is not making the work at times, or, learning the craft. It's balancing your time. It is getting enough time to practice it. We're in a day and age where there's so many great things to do, and it's hard to say no to the good stuff sometimes. But ultimately, for me, I just have to connect to that joy and passion of doing it, which is what drives me. So, as long as I stay connected to that, it just makes me, make sure I carve out enough time for my own work. But look, when I'm painting in my studio, I've got into the habit of turning my phone off. I have a day or 2 days to myself where I just don't take any. I let text messages or calls come through, but I don't answer them till the next day.
But yes, creating the work when you're an artist and exhibiting, your work's being recognised as well, with the Davis Award, I think it is, and the Bale Award. I wonder if you could tell me a little bit about, for an artist who is working and getting that recognition, putting your work into competitions or that sort of thing. What's your advice about that for artists, and what has your learning been in receiving the amazing awards that you've had?
Oh, look, particularly the Alice Bale, I feel incredibly grateful, and if Alice Bale was here, I'd really love to have a chat to her and explain, what I did on the 4 months of traveling overseas through that scholarship. It's a good thing. I mean, there's lots of supportive people in the arts, and art societies, art prizes, and I think they're a great thing to pursue and be part of. But ultimately, I would say to any artist that you've got to come back to that love of it. It's the love and the joy that just drives it. And I think when you're in love with the process, and you just can't wait to get to the easel or canvas or outside to do some plein air painting, I think that really shows through in your work. So just staying true to yourself and following that passion. Having said that, there's plenty of art prizes to enter that, if it's maritime you paint, or if it's landscape or portraiture. And I encourage any artist to, exhibit in any of those, enter in any of those, because ultimately, these works are supposed to be, the good ones we make are supposed to be seen. And, as we know, the general public absolutely loves seeing painting and drawing and all sorts of art forms. So when you make something good, it's great to get it out there and enrich someone else's life, because ultimately that's part of it.
Absolutely, well said. Is there been another artist that has really inspired you?
Probably a little bit cliche, but definitely Rembrandt. I knew who he was, since I was a child, but my tutor really gave me a great insight into his life and his process. And that just really struck a chord with me. And, the chiaroscuro, light and dark, and as you can see, that's right through my painting. And that's just the process that I paint. I just love the light. So when I sort of fell in love with that process, then anything becomes a painting, because if it's got light and shadow, then anything's a painting.
I like that. That is great. And also there's some really interesting learning you said earlier about sometimes when you're starting a work, if you just stopped at the even, it might look a bit abstract. Sometimes that can be a beautiful painting as well, just, because of where you're taking the viewer and what's coming from you into that work.
So it's just an ongoing series where I take this page motif, which has really become almost a portal between two worlds.
It's intriguing what you're doing.
So
each
painting has a rectangle format, and that format was based on the page of a book, the symbolic page of a book. That motif is being called a doorway, a portal, a window, all sorts of things by different people. So for me, it's a page, but for a lot of people, it's the entrance way into the mystery. So they're very, as you can see, they're very abstract, but then I use a realist motive to bring the viewer into the work. And that could be as varied as gum leaves, a flower, cauldron, all sorts, a feather, all sorts of interesting motives.
Wonderful. What's your advice of people if they wanted to get a nice piece of work from you, Ben? How do they do that?
Well, I don't do a huge amount of commissions. I'm quite particular because I do like to make my own work. But having said that, I do a number of them each year. And I work closely with the people to make sure that I'm making something that, you know, they can invest in and something they can enjoy for the rest of their lives. Only recently, I've just finished a commission of a young fellow, a friend of mine came to me, and he's had two of his best mates pass away reasonably recently. So I did a commission of both of his mates for his birthday, and he was just thrilled. So,
and it's lovely to have an artist that makes you feel so comfortable and just easygoing like you, Ben. You can sit down and have a yarn with and give you something like that. That's not only last in your lifetime, but will be able to pass down from one generation to another, because a lot of art is something that stands, as we know, stands the test of time. It kind of does get preserved. So maybe we could talk a little bit, just before we leave, a little bit about your art classes.
So I was teaching at the Victorian Artists Society and several other art societies, and demonstrating all over Melbourne and doing workshops. But obviously with COVID, it's forced us all to go online. So I just, invested a little bit of money in some good cameras, already had a good PC, and set it all up. So I have two cameras running. I have one on myself when I need to demo, and one on my palette as well. So my students can get a real good sense of the process. So
Yes.
They're not hugely different to the way that I teach. You know, the way that I teach comes from a combination of critiques, guidance, demonstrations. But as I was just saying before, one of the things that it's really generated is just these very interesting conversations around the peripheral things of painting. You know, often we're just focusing on the techniques and how to mix colours and what we're going to paint, but you know, there's important topics like, as I mentioned, you know, aesthetics, beauty, composition, art history. You know, I've introduced them to lots of other artists that I would never look at. And one of the main exercises we do, which has been around, you know, been practiced for several hundred years, is master copies, where we take a famous painting that we really love and we copy it. And that way we really, really get to understand the process of painting and the artist's thoughts that go into the painting. I have 4 classes during the week, and then I have an advanced oil painting course, which I run 2 Saturdays per month, which is an all-day class. And the way that it works is we hop on at 10 a.m, we go through critiques and guidance, which normally finishes about 12, and then they go off and paint. And then we all meet again at 3 for a bit more of a critique and discussion. And then I set them up for homework and where they're going to go from there and that runs once a month. I've actually found the Zoom classes to work very, very well. And my classes have gone from localised in Melbourne to, I've got students from North Queensland, Bright, Eildon, all over the place.
Your classes sound fun because people do enjoy the social aspect also of painting and the journey that painting brings. Fantastic. Well, thanks very much from everyone on the AWS community. If you really like finding out about Ben and what we're doing, don't forget to hit the like button, to smash the like button down the bottom, and also click the subscribe, where you can actually get notified when we've got new things coming up or when Ben's doing some exciting new stuff with exhibitions. So again, thanks so much, Ben.
Thanks, Sylvie. It's always nice to chat to a fellow artist. And as I said, what you're doing is a great thing, and building the community and having those very interesting conversations about, you know, studios and processes and, you know, what's going on behind the scenes. So much appreciated.
My pleasure. And you have a fantastic day. Happy painting.
Thanks, Sylvie. You too.